So when it comes to the most tunable BMW engines, the is certainly deserving of the #1 spot. Hey everyone, this is Zach with 8020 Media, here today with a video on the best BMW tuners engines of all time. Over the years, BMW has built dozens of excellent engines, and a number of those are also great tuners engines. Now, I will admit this subject is very subjective when it comes to the most tunable and best tuner BMW engines of all time. Really, any engine can be considered a great tuners engine, given you have enough of a budget to really push the limits and take that car and that engine to the next level. But with that said, let's go ahead and jump into this list and discuss some of BMW's greatest tuner engines of all time. This list is primarily comprised of turbocharged BMW engines, specifically from the modern era. Naturally, any forced induction engine is really going to be the better tuner's platform and engine to start with, since all of the parts are already there in place for forced induction, which is required on most platforms to make considerable power and torque. But with that said, there are still some excellent tuner engines that are naturally aspirated, and BMW has built a few of those over the years. At number 5 on the list, we have the BMW S54, found predominantly in the E46 M3. In the case of the BMW S54, it's a strong engine, and it also has a lot of different directions that you can go with the S54. Anything from high-revving naturally aspirated builds to turbocharged or superchargers. This is an incredibly strong engine. It does have a cast iron engine block, and the internals are also very strong, so with proper fueling, the S54 can handle upwards of about 600 to 700 wheel horsepower on the stock internals, again with proper fueling, tuning, and supporting mods, but still very impressive numbers for the S54, especially being an older engine. Now, it is going to take some money to get it there, just because this engine is naturally aspirated, so if you are converting to forced induction, oftentimes those turbo and supercharger kits for the S54 engine can run in excess of about $5,000 to $10,000, so it is going to be pretty expensive to get the S54 to that point. Incredible engine, lots of different directions you can go with this, and also it's not just an excellent engine you're getting in the S54, but you're also getting the whole package with the BMW M car and the M3 in particular. Moving on to number 4 on the list for the best BMW tuners engines of all time, we have the BMW S63, predominantly found in the M5, M6, and M8. So the S63 from the factory can produce up to 617 horsepower and 553 pound-feet of torque. Already incredible performance, which is to be expected from a modern 4.4-liter twin turbocharged V8. But not only do you get that incredible performance straight out of the factory, on top of that, the S63 is incredibly tunable. It's easy to make massive power with the S63. Just a tune and basic bolt-ons can push the engine into the 700 to 750 plus wheel horsepower ballpark, as well as 800 plus wheel torque. One thing to mention there is those numbers are already pushing the upper limits of a couple critical components, notably the connecting rods, especially at 800 plus wheel torque. Those are going to be one of the first breaking points of the S63 engine. And on top of that, the older models with the 7-speed dual clutch transmission, that transmission does start slipping around 650 to 700 wheel torque. And that is a very expensive upgrade if you do want to upgrade the dual clutch transmission to really make more power and more torque. That is expensive. Now, on the newer models with the ZF8 transmission, that's a much more capable of handling that extra power. So that's the one thing that holds the S63 back a little bit. Something to be aware of if you're considering an S63. But nonetheless, the fact that this engine can make that kind of power so easily with, again, just a tune and a couple bolt-on upgrades, talking about less than $2,000 in mods, and you can have a 700 plus wheel horsepower engine out of that. So the S63 is a great tuner engine, despite the fact that it is in larger models like the M5, M6, and M8. For number 3 on the list, we have the BMW N54 3-liter twin turbocharged inline-6, predominantly found in the E90 and E92 335i, as well as the E82 135i. Ultimately, when it comes to the BMW N54, out of all of the engines we're discussing on this list, the N54 is debatably the least reliable of the bunch, so that is the one thing that the N54 has going against it. However, on the stock turbos, the N54 is able to make upwards of 450 to 500 wheel horsepower with just a tune, some basic bolt-on upgrades, and about 500 to 525 pound-feet of torque at the wheels. If you want to push things further, There are tons of upgraded turbos available, anything from twin turbo upgrades to single turbo conversions to make anywhere from 500 to 1,000 plus wheel horsepower. The engine itself is incredibly reliable, rarely runs into any issues even at 600, 650 wheel horsepower. Internally, these engines rarely see any failures. It's pretty uncommon for head gaskets to have issues, for heads to lift, for any valve train to have issues. Even the timing chain is nearly bulletproof. Rods, pistons, bearings, all of that tend to be very reliable up to that 650 wheel horsepower ballpark. Anything above 700 wheel horsepower is where it really starts to become a matter of when something goes wrong rather than if something goes wrong. Ultimately, 600 to 650 wheel horsepower is a very safe ballpark for the BMW N54, and if you're willing to spend a little bit more on internal upgrades, mostly just rods, pistons, and bearings, these engines can handle quite a bit more power despite the open deck block design, which will be one of the next concerns around 800 wheel horsepower. So great engine, great tuner's car. There are endless aftermarket options available for the N54. The old saying, fast, cheap, reliable, pick two, really does ring true in the case of the N54. It is fast and cheap, but not reliable. Nonetheless, the N54 makes the list for the ease of making 500 wheel horsepower and upwards with pretty minimal modifications. At number 2 on the list, we have the BMW B58 3-liter inline-6 turbocharged engine. This is predominantly found in 2016 and up 40i models, notably the 240i, 340i, and 440i. The B58 is very much like the N54 in its base design. It's just 2 generations newer, essentially. So there's the N54, N55, and now the B58 in the modern days. The B58 is a much more advanced engine than the N54, and it's a lot more reliable. And so when you're looking for the full package of something that is reliable and fast, and cheap may not apply here depending on what you're looking for, it is going to be a bit more expensive to get into a B58 powered car. Like the N54, the B58 can make about 500 wheel horsepower, even a little bit more on the stock turbocharger. With an upgraded turbo and proper supporting mods and tuning, the engine can safely handle about 650 to 700 wheel horsepower. They can even handle a little bit more in the shorter term, but for longevity would recommend keeping it below that 700 wheel horsepower mark. If you're looking to take things further, the B58 can handle 800 to 1,000 plus wheel horsepower with just some basic internal upgrades. Pretty much rods, bearings, and pistons are all that you need to push past that 800 wheel horsepower mark pretty safely and reliably. One other thing of note, recently I filmed a video on the most reliable BMW engines of all time, and the B58 did make it on that list very easily. That just highlights that this is a very reliable engine, and it's often hard to find that where you get an engine that is incredibly reliable and also incredibly capable. On top of that, especially when you look at the newest variants, the technical updates, the TU and the TU2 engines, those are especially good engines. It'll be interesting to see the direction of the TU2 in the future, since BMW did actually build the B58 TU2 with both direct and port injection, so that only makes it all the more tuner friendly and even easier to keep up with the fuel demands when you do start pushing for 700 plus wheel horsepower. Last but not least, number 1 on the list, we have the BMW S58 3-liter inline-6 twin turbocharged engine. This is predominantly found in the G80 M3, G82 M4, and the BMW M2. I can't say enough good things about the BMW S58 engine. Truly believe, in my opinion, that this is not only one of the best BMW engines of all time, but really just one of the best engines of all time in the world. Time will tell. The S58 is still a little bit newer. It still hasn't fully hit its stride in the aftermarket, and despite that, it's already proven to be the most capable BMW engine, especially looking at all their modern offerings. Now, the S58 is built off of the BMW B58 engine, but for those who may think it's just a glorified B58, that is certainly far from the truth. The S58 is about 80% redesigned, and 80% of the parts are different from the BMW B58 engine. So while they share the same base design, the S58 is really a significant improvement and evolvement from the BMW B58 engine. When it comes to performance and tunability and why this engine really makes the list, the S58 is capable of making 700 to 750 plus wheel horsepower on the stock turbos. The G80 M3 and G82 M4 have already run in the 9s in the quarter mile on the stock turbos at 140 130 plus miles an hour, so that's already incredible performance for just the stock turbochargers. It's really just an incredibly strong engine from top to bottom. Again, it's still a little bit newer. A lot of these engines are still under warranty, so aftermarket is still a little bit limited, and of course not as many owners quite yet pushing these engines to the limits and really risking blowing up a very expensive engine. So the S58 will take some time before we see its true capability. However, it does seem likely that these engines will have no issue holding up at 850, 900 plus wheel horsepower in the longer term without really touching the engine at all, except for upgraded turbochargers and a couple basic bolt-ons. And if you dive into all of the specs of this engine, it really becomes clear that it's not just your typical street car or street engine. It is a very race spec oriented engine that was just built for the street as well. So when it comes to the most tunable BMW engines, the S58 is certainly deserving of the #1 spot. With all that said, it is important to just drop a couple honorable mentions for tuner-friendly BMW engines. The N63, the BMW N55, S55, the B48, the S65, and even older engines like the BMW M30 could certainly make the case for any of those engines that they also deserve to be on this list. So when it comes to BMW tuner engines, there are really tons of great options, and really just depends on what you're looking for in a car and specifically what you're looking for in the engine. Anyway, guys, that wraps up our video for today. If you appreciated the content, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and check out the description below for more. Thanks, everyone.